Hello people on the pizza tubes, I'm Mr. Spork and these are Mr. Spork's hands. I'm back in front of you trying to make a series of new videos, but I thought instead of doing silly old camera tests, I'd just show you what I was having for lunch today. We've got a blizzard bearing down on us, as you can see. Nice and blustery. We're getting about 5 centimeters every hour or so. And that to me is a perfect excuse to crank the oven all the way up to 500 degrees and make some pizza. In one of my other videos, I've showed you how I make my pizza dough. And again, the trick for making pizza dough is to let it slow rise overnight in the fridge so it's nice and slow and develops flavor, and it's easier to work with, easier to stretch. If you've ever fought with a pizza dough kind of bouncing back on you, you need to let it rest more, or you need to let it rise slowly. So that's what I've done. This is a round I made, actually I made this one 2 days ago. I've already patted it out. It's ready to go. And in my other video, I talk about how everybody should get a pizza stone. Pizza stones are fabulous. I, in fact, use a kiln stone that I got from the Pottery Supply Warehouse. It's cheaper and it's thicker and holds more heat. But if you don't have one of those, guess what? We can go to our good old trusty cast iron skillet. I've heated this one up. It's about 360, 375, something like that. Probably even a little bit hotter as it came out of the oven. But what you want to do is get your pan ready to go. I just put in a little squirt of oil there, and because I like the flavor, I take just a little tiny bit of cornmeal, sprinkle it around in there. That's absolutely not the cornmeal that you'd use to get it off of the pizza peel. That's really just there for flavor. But I drop it in, drape it over the edges. I am absolutely not going to call this Chicago-style pizza because that would invariably start a flame war with people from Chicago. Let's just say that this is Chicago-inspired pizza. All right, so get that crust where you want it. I'm going to tuck it back in a little bit better when I get the fillings in there. That's about as good as I want there. Now I've got cheese. This is a good quality mozzarella, and I actually took my big hunk of Parmesan and grated about 25 grams of fresh Parmesan in that mix as well, because that just gives it a little bit better character, I think. So you take your cheese. Yes, cheese goes in first. And the way I always learn how to do it is to make sure and you shove a little extra cheese in the corners, because who doesn't like extra cheese in the corners? Get it in there nice and tight. That dough is springing back on the sides because it's up against that hot corner. Don't worry, use cheese to prop it up. And then the balance of that, this is probably a good, well, I don't know, quarter pound of cheese, maybe a little bit more by the time you get that Parmesan in there. Give it a nice base. This is my sauce, and this is my no-cook sauce. I use just good old-fashioned canned San Marzano tomatoes. That's all you really need. I throw them in the food processor with just a tiny bit of red wine vinegar for acidity, pinch of salt because I buy the no-salt versions, a little bit of dried oregano, and because I like it, a little bit of hot chili flakes. Blitz it down. Let that sit for a good 35-40 minutes so those flavors come together. But you don't have to cook it. Just blitz it in the food processor and you're ready to go. So with that base of cheese in there, I'm going to be relatively generous with my tomato sauce, because this is a deep dish pie, as they call it. Get those in there. Yeah, I think that's about what I want for the first part. And if you want to put meat in there, absolutely go ahead. You could do pepperoni on top of the cheese. You could do pork, any kind of raw pork, but make sure you get those pieces nice and thin on top of the cheese layer if you're going to use pork, because you want to make sure it cooks all the way through. If you want chunks of pork, basically go to your stovetop and pre-cook a little bit. But I'm not using meat today. I have got some mushrooms that I cooked down with some onions that I cooked down. Mushrooms and onions, I think, are fabulous on the pizza if you know how to cook the mushroom. You can find this recipe on my blog, on my website up there in the link in the corner up there. And I talk about how to cook a mushroom. A lot of people get it wrong. If you don't leave the mushroom alone in the pan, it never has enough contact with the heat to cook and drive off the moisture, concentrate the flavor, and you get those nasty floppy mushrooms. Don't do that. Basically, get them in a pan with a little bit of brown butter, toss them to coat them, and then leave them alone. Don't touch the pan for a good minute, 2, 3 even sometimes, depending on the heat, so that they drive off that moisture, they get the good color. That's how you cook a mushroom. I'm also going to do a few slices, very fine slices of red bell pepper, because that's what I had in the fridge today. And then I am actually going to put just a little tiny bit more cheese on the top. Get it all in there and spread it out. And so that cheese doesn't burn, I'm going to do just another really thin layer of sauce over the top. After I get this all assembled, I'm going into my oven that is cranked up to, I think it's 500 degrees, 475 degrees, as hot as I could get it. I will be back in a bit to show you how it turns out. So here we are half an hour later. After about 15 minutes at full bore, I went ahead and knocked the temperature down to 350, spun the pan halfway around, and that finishes off the interior of the pizza perfectly. Of course, if you put raw meat in there, please do check with an instant read thermometer to make sure that you've got a safe temperature. But this veggie version is ready to unmold, and the beautiful thing about cast iron, especially if you've seasoned it properly, is that it will release the pizza nice and easy. At least I hope it does. And sometimes you get one little stuck spot on the side. But the cast iron creates kind of an oven inside an oven, and that's what gives you a beautiful crust just about every single time. And again, this is not Chicago pizza, but certainly Chicago inspired, which means it's thick. So I'll try to cut into a slice here for you. I would probably let this rest and set up a little bit in any other circumstance, but you guys want to see what it looks like inside, right? So here we go. Probably going to be a nice little bit of cheese stretch there. That's exactly what we want. Beautiful pizza done with the same crust as your thin crust, but in a pan style. See, now this is what happens if you don't let it set. It's gonna sog a little bit, but that's all right. I promise it will be gone before anybody notices. Thanks for watching as always. I appreciate you liking and thumbs upping and tweety face spacing. I'm gonna go watch the blizzard pile up and have a little bit of pizza. You should go make one too. Talk to you soon. Cheers.